I was just laying there, and it was like this tall entity from behind me, tall blue white skinny entity, 6.5 feet tall, realized that I was awake and literally came through the door and brought all this blue white energy, light with it. And it covered the distance. It was walking, but floating walking. Okay, so it wasn't like going plunk, plunk, plunk. It just was upright and it floated and stopped on my right side in about 2 seconds.
The Bodega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with the Bodega and sharing one of yours. In a small village in Scotland during the 1960s, a young boy named Caleb often wandered the woods near his family's farm. One crisp winter evening, as he made his way home, he heard a faint melodic chime, like silver bells being rung in the distance. Thinking it was coming from a nearby church, he followed the sound, only to find himself deeper in the forest, surrounded by otherworldly stillness. Suddenly, a shimmer of light appeared, floating just above the ground, pulsating calmly. Calm froze. The shimmering form seemed to take the outline of a figure, radiant and translucent. The sound of the bells grew louder, almost hypnotic, before abruptly stopping. The figure vanished, and the woods returned to their usual quiet. For years, Callum would tell this story, convinced it wasn't a dream or a trick of his imagination, but a true encounter with something beyond explanation. Welcome back to Codega's Codex of Curiosities, the place where the strange, the unexpected, and the awe-inspiring converge. I'm Rod, the Codega, your guide through the labyrinth of mysteries. Tonight, I'm thrilled to welcome Leslie and Stephen Shaw, renowned authors and experts on UFOs, alien abductions, and the paranormal. From their childhood encounters with shimmering entities and mysterious silver bells to UFO sightings and psychic phenomena, the Shaws have a lifelong extraordinary experiences to share. We'll explore their book, who they are and why who they are and what are they up to, and dive deep into their groundbreaking research into the intersection of the paranormal and the extraterrestrial. All right, everyone. Again, it's Rye here, and I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Making sure you hit that like, subscribe, the usual. It really helps. Rate my show on Spotify or Apple. It really helps with the program, and it helps me to share and to go farther. That's the bottom line. Again, it's all about saving me a little bit of legwork because doing a podcast and a show there's a lot of work that entails with it. If you also want to support the show, I have a Patreon, so you can watch and listen to every one of these episodes ad free, and that's always a plus. Then also, I have my merch store, so go check that out. And if you like something, if you see something, you like it, buy it. All right, and without further ado, let's bring Leslie and Stephen Shaw to the show. Welcome to Codega's Codex of Welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities, Leslie and Stephen. Stephen, oh my gosh, why am I'm stumbling all over my words today.
Yeah, tongue twisters.
Yeah.
It is. The alliteration that I have with my show, I should be good with all these tongue twisters, but apparently I just seem to be stumbling over everything today. Maybe because I had a bit of a day off, and instead of teaching like I normally do, I was out clearing the land. So I have some bees that I'm keeping, I guess you would say, and I had to clear all the vegetation that was growing around their hives today.
Aw, bees. I like bees.
I got some stories about bees that are actually pretty interesting. So
yes,
maybe we'll get to those.
Maybe we'll get to those. Yes. So Leslie and Stephen, why don't you guys introduce yourself and then tell everybody where they can find you?
Okay. I'm Leslie Shaw. This is Stephen, and
Hello.
we are co-authors of the book Who They Are and What They're Up To. It is a UFO book, but mainly it's about. It's not so much about one incident of UFO experiences, but nor is it totally about our experiences. The first chapter, the first preface rather, we have our personal experiences, but the book is mainly about our theories of as who's flying the UFOs in our skies and what they're after. So that's kind of the book. And we have a documentary out, a YouTube documentary called Who They Are. And if you want the theory quickly, that's the faster way to get it than reading
The
a book,
abridged version. Yes, the abridged version. I
And
agree.
also, and also too, the documentary, which is 54 minutes long, is now available also on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's made because it had enough,
commercial
views, so,
free,
yeah,
and
right. Yeah,
there
it's
too.
Amazon. It's for $2.99 for rent and $9.99 for purchase. Without the same thing. Without
the high def
the
quality
high def
version.
quality. Yes.
So.
Yeah, Sky Island Storytelling did a very nice job.
Yeah, we were thrilled with their production quality, and
yeah, they're making a little bit on it. That's nice.
Yeah, that's nice for them. And
Definitely.
I'm a retired journalist and semi-retired. Yeah, I still work for the paper. I do page layout and copy editing now. I don't really write long, big stories for them.
Well, you work about 25 hours a week.
Yeah, so part-time.
Okay.
And then Stephen is a retired acupuncturist and Tai Chi teacher. And he's up until quite recently, he's been playing music in an orchestra, right, darling?
Yeah, I play several instruments, but
several instruments. That's
impressive.
Yeah.
I actually had what I want to do in the future. I had a set of Tai Chi tapes I put out called Shaw's Tai Chi Productions back in 1983 to 1986. And so I'd love to get those on our show.
Find the master quality versions of them.
The long forms of the Yang style, the Chen style, the sword form. Mm-hmm. I'd love to be able to get people to say that that I can back up what I taught for 23 years.
Yeah.
So.
That is cool. And why not put them to music? If you have the ability to play numerous instruments, you could actually put some of your own background music in there. What kind of instruments do you end up playing?
Well, I started out on the accordion, and that's kind of like what I'm best at.
That's what he was playing in the orchestra.
Yeah, and then I almost played the same level on the piano. So I've written a lot of stuff for the piano and also for the accordion.
Yeah.
And I played woodwinds all throughout school and after school too, and guitar. And believe it or not, I played the glockenspiel when I was in the Navy Drum and Bugle Corps. It was one of these things where you spend a week and a half longer in boot camp, but you get to play an instrument, and it was really cool. I mean, I'd never played the glockenspiel, but as nobody else wanted to play it, so guess what? I'll play it.
Yeah,
I'll march.
Why not?
Play it.
Why not?
It doesn't look like a very difficult instrument for.
It's basically like a modified marimba that you have to carry, and hit with the side,
I need to put that on the. I'm going to put a picture up and So, is it like an xylophone kind of thing?
It's like
it's
a
really small one you carry and bang on.
It's like a xylophone. Yeah, it's a xylophone. It's exactly. It's very much like a xylophone. It was like so much fun. I'd never played it, but I forgot how hard can it be? I can play all these other instruments, and nobody else wanted to play it. So hey.
I think once a musician really learns music theory very, very well, they can switch it up to other instruments easier. It's almost like learning the first language is hard, but the second language is easier.
I'm very good with languages too. Languages are easy for me.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would see that. You would have those who have are better with instruments and music and kind of like the arts almost have an easier time for picking up the different languages, whereas myself, for me, it's like mathematics has always been my forte and things like that. So picking up a new language, which I am currently, learning Spanish, for me is difficult. I actually find it quite difficult. That I'm like, and there's me as my job. I'm teaching students English. Like I'm an English tutor teaching ESL students, so English as a second language. I'm a tutor for that, and it's like, okay, maybe I should practice what I preach and get a tutor myself to further my Spanish.
Yeah, the studies show that learning another language or like learning a musical instrument will keep you from getting dementia or Alzheimer's. It basically puts it off longer for sure. It's just because you're activating different areas of the brain. It's like, drawing from the right side of the brain, that old book that came out like 40, 50 years ago. It shows that for sure. It's, like say, for instance, a person is very, very right hand dominant. They should really do some things with their left hand. It really
Interesting.
helps to balance out the brain. That's conclusive evidence.
Well, I was doing that today because I'm right-handed and I was clearing the land, clearing all this vegetation with my right hand, and then I was getting tired, so I had to switch it up to my left hand. So
Yep.
I'm saying I'm starting on that journey then. But okay, so where can they find your book as well? Is that on Amazon as well?
Yes, it's Amazon and also Ingram Books, because the bookstores prefer Ingram.
Primarily
Yeah.
Amazon. Ingram is just for book resellers.
Yeah,
bookstores.
But
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Amazon's like almost has a monopoly on everything right now. So, but it's
Yeah.
easier to find that. So let's start off with, you said in the beginning of the book, you guys put your own personal experiences in there. Why don't we start off with that? Can we dive into that? So if either Leslie or Stephen, you want to take control
I'll
and
start.
let me know.
Yeah,
All
he's
right.
the experiencer for sure.
Yeah.
More in the family.
And as we were writing the book, it just was coming together, but there wasn't enough there as far as like the real motivation in the first place for writing the book was my experiences.
Right.
Okay, so we really had to, and that was kind of like one of the last things we did.
And again, we wanted people to have an idea of where we were coming from.
Right. That we're not just all of a sudden we decided to write a book because we maybe seen a couple of UFOs. No, it's like my family, bloodline has had 4 generations of experience with. Okay, I'll tell your audience that what we thought was a spirit guide that I was told at the age of 3 was called O'Glegley, that had been with the Shaw and the Rowe and the Newman and even the Griffiths families for 4 generations.
At least 4 generations.
So when I was 3 years old, I started getting my first visitation by this quote unquote spirit guide that would show up. First thing, in the middle of the night, I would get this like an animal. It wasn't an animal. It was a 2-footed being that would be jumping on my stomach and my chest.
And it was invisible, right?
Yes, invisible,
Yeah.
and it was kind of playful, and I didn't feel any threat from it, but I just chalked it up as a 3-year-old. I mean, at 3 years old, I was thinking of when I was.
Sorry, I want to correct this. So, a 2-foot being like 2 foot high, or has only 2 feet?
Small,
okay,
like
basically about 2
and
foot.
both actually.
Yes, about yes, exactly. That's a good correction there. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was the type of kid when I was 3 years old. I was thinking when I was in the park on one spring morning, thinking, "Oh my God, I got to go through this again." I was basically kind of a loner. I didn't want to play with the other kids, and I was thinking when I was 3 that kind of like, do I have to go through this human life again?
And he comes from an incredibly psychic family.
Yeah.
The family, they're all really psychic people.
Well, on my mom's side for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
she was. All the women, apart from one, were automatic writers. So that kind of stuff. And my mom proved it on many occasions, knowing stuff before we knew about it. I mean,
yeah. Old Glegley would tell her she was, the automatic writing, the way it works is the person goes into a trance.
They feel compelled.
Yeah, and they feel a compulsion to do so. And then sometimes not even their dominant hand will just write a message out from beyond, they have no idea what they're writing. And
that makes me think of a book that I was just talking with another a Dweller on Two Planets. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very fascinating book, and that's all automatic writing as well. So that's really, really interesting. Yes,
that makes sense that might happen, because
it does. Yeah, it's a different form of communication for sure.
Yeah.
So
and sorry, and what was your spirit guide's name again?
Old Glegley.
Old Glegley.
It's in the book. It's OLEGLE GLY. Old Glegley.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Old Glegley. Yeah. In fact, that was the license plate of my cousin Cheryl. Her first car was a Triumph that her father bought for her, Douglas, and the very first car she got, the license plate was Old Glegley.
It's because Old Glegley had saved his life.
Had saved his life when he was in the Royal Air Force, when he was stationed in Ceylon, which is now today's Sri Lanka, which is also one of the stories too.
He's like a protector of the family, but also preys on the family.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both, it's almost like they're protecting the prize cow that they need, they're
right. So when I was about, it was like I was about 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old. I saw what I call the garden gnomes, the shimmery garden gnomes. I kind of heard a noise, and I was in the top of my bunk bed. My brother was on the bottom, and I turned over in the middle of the night, and I saw these 4 or 5. They looked literally like gnomes, okay? And they were coming, and they were shimmering, and they were about maybe a foot and a half tall, and they were walking into my room, kind of looking around, and I was looking at them and looking at them, and then they noticed that I saw them, and we kind of locked eyes for a bit, and then I kind of chickened out, and I rolled over. So that's when I saw what I call the shimmery garden gnomes. And interestingly, when my brother turned the same age, he started sleeping in our closet for 2 whole years. And I asked Philip, I said, Philip, why are you sleeping in the closet? And he said, well, I'm afraid of the little men that come at night. And because I had seen the little man, and he's on the bottom bunk bed, I thought, well, obviously he probably would see it more often than I did. And he literally was scared of these little guys that would come, these little beings that would come. So,
Obviously believed him because he saw him too.
and then my
That's that really adds a lot of credibility when your brother and you didn't like bring it forward. He's like, it's the little
nope,
men. Yeah. So
nope.
that's interesting.
In our family, we really didn't talk about things unless we had to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like a thing we kept amongst ourselves.
They were very reticent to pull it. We had to almost pull teeth to get some of the stories out of them.
And I didn't talk to my friends about it at school. They think I like say, you're living in a haunted house, or you're lying, or you're just plain nuts.
Yeah.
So it was just like my brother. I asked my brother about his early life before he ended his life. I asked him on several occasions, and he said, Stephen, I just can't really remember my earlier life. And this is not a guy who had trouble with his memory. He was a very intelligent. He taught calculus at a college level for fun, for extra money.
I think he was extra traumatized by it, and it kind of came out later in life when he had emotional problems later in life that we attribute to this early childhood trauma.
He started having clairaudience later on in life, and I've had that most of my life. And he just
he couldn't deal with it.
He kind of started blaming me, for sounds he was hearing when I was up there at the house that we
were living 400 miles away,
455 miles away. Yeah, it just got to be a
and
mess.
He was blaming you.
Yeah,
he thought
he was becoming more paranoid as he got older, and then after the death of their father, it seemed he became kind of unhinged. And 4 months later, he shot himself and first his mother and his 2 cats, and then himself in this gruesome murder-suicide.
On his 51st birthday, December 1st, 2017.
Yeah, 2017 was a rough year for us.
It's very traumatic. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
very traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
And my father died too, and one of our dogs died that year.
It was within 2 days of each other.
The year from hell. Everything was just rolling along very cheery for us up until that moment,
Yes, to say the least.
And then anyways, my first knowledge of having a lost time experience was around about that same time too. But I would say I was 8 or 9, and people say, "Well, why can't you remember that?" Well, unless you keep a diary, you're not going to remember exactly. But I know that I was in the bunk bed, and I just started sleeping in the bunk bed, and I was awake in the middle of the night, and I heard this unusual sound. We had a dog, but it was certainly not the sound of the dog. And so I kind of crept out of the top of the bunk bed, and I started walking down the hallway toward the living room, and the light was on in the kitchen. Now, we always left the light on so you could see where you're going. And I remember very distinctly my heart racing, and my blood pressure, my pulse was racing, and my eyes were dilated, and I was literally kind of a little scared of what I was going to see. And I was, the noise kept on going, and it wasn't a human sound that I could recognize. And I was about to turn the corner, and I just blacked out. And the next thing I know, I'm back in my bed, probably a few hours later, and no clue how I somehow got back into my bed and tucked myself back in.
And as we started doing our research, we discovered quickly that this is the signature for the alien abduction phenomenon.
I was just about to ask, like, what
Yeah.
do you think happened? And of course, I'm alluding to that because that's what I believe is a big thing. But
Mhm.
do you
Yeah.
believe that you were abducted, Stephen?
I honestly, at this point, at that point, and for many years, for decades, I just chalked it up to the family spirit guide or
Yeah.
some weirdism. At that point, I wasn't thinking anything about it.
We certainly think it now,
or
though.
aliens.
Yeah, now
But
that we've done our research,
yeah,
it's
when we
like,
found out,
that's what it is.
when we found out that my brother, when he was 16 in
Yeah.
1982, when he had a series of 3 incidents that happened to him at the house that we were actually physically building in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas.
Sonora,
So,
California.
and so the last night of the 3 things that happened to him, he was awakened and he literally saw a 6.5 foot tall, skinny, gray alien that was standing in his doorway of his bedroom.
Yeah.
And they looked at each other for like a couple seconds. And my brother wasn't a small guy. He was 6'3.5". Okay, big guy. All right, so he wasn't, he wasn't a small guy. And they looked at each other, and then he blacked out.
Yeah.
And again, my brother. See, that was this old Glegly character always showed up looking the same, in the same form.
Well, tall and skinny, yeah.
Tall, about 6.5 foot tall, skinny. Sometimes a black, wearing a hat. For me, it was from 1979. It was again 6.5 foot tall, skinny, blue white, shining blue white. Blue white. For my uncle, it was black, wearing a red hat.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Stephen saw those, the blue light was flooding the room.
Yes.
So, he could be a gray standing in the shadows looking dark, and he can be a gray standing in the doorway looking normal and blue, and then a gray standing in this blue-white light looking like a blue-white entity.
The difference with mine is that I had physical manifestations.
Yeah,
that
wait till he
occurred.
tells you that.
I don't know we talked about that, but it is in the book. But shall I just go through the
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the
please,
five
things
please.
that happened?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
this was early mid-January of 1979 and included all 5 members of the family, 2 different houses. Okay, the one we were building in Sonora, California, and the one we had in Woodland Hills, where my dad and I were cabinet makers, and that we had our shop there. And my sister, who was 13 at the time, was living with us. So, anyways, the first night, at breakfast time, my dad came to breakfast and he said, Stephen, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night. And I said, okay, Dad, that's kind of interesting dream. And we went to work.
And shrugged it off.
I kind of shrugged it off. My dad, having been a Bobby in England from 1952 to 56, and also being in the RAF from 50 to 52, he was not one of these guys. Also, growing up, going through World War II as a kid, not one of these guys for flights of fancy. Okay. So anyway, I just kind of shrugged it off. The next night, I was starting to study Tai Chi at the time, and I was very much into Paramahansa Yogananda's work. So I was reading this little booklet that he had called Metaphysical Meditations, and I just thought it was really cool. It really kind of segued with what I was doing. And I gave it to my dad. I said, Dad, you should really read some of this stuff. My dad and I were best friends at the time, so anyway, so I gave him this booklet and went back to my room, and about a half an hour later at 9:30 p.m., he came into my room with this puzzled look on his face, and he said, Stephen, I'm hearing a silver bell. And I said, okay, Dad. Myself being a musician, I know what a silver bell sounds like. So anyway, I went into the living room, and sure enough, there was this distinct sound of a ding, ding, ding that was coming from inside the wall, the 2x4 wall next to the chimney. So the first thing my dad and I do, we look at each other, then we look up the flue, look up the chimney, and there's nothing there, but we still hear the chiming going on. So we bang on the wall. Then we got my sister. My sister she reluctantly came into the living room, basically wanting to have nothing to do with this whole Gluggly stuff at the time.
Yeah.
And the first thing she said, we didn't prime her or anything, she said, where's that bell coming from? And she heard it too. And so we did the same thing. We banged on the wall, and this distinct silver bell kept on chiming from inside the wall for a good 10 minutes. And then it stopped, and then we just didn't know what to think, and we decided, okay. Then we ended up going to bed. Okay. Nothing happened during the night then. But the next morning, we always would call my mom and my brother because that was the house that where they were living at and the house we were building, and we were a close family in that way. So my dad got on the phone with my mom, and my mom said, Jeffrey, the weirdest thing happened last night. About 9:15, 9:20, I heard this bell and I thought it was the phone. And so she was sitting next to the phone, so she picked up the phone, and this baritone voice, male voice on the other end said, I am the invisible Beachy, which could have been Oglegly, Beachy. I don't know.
We're not sure
So
about
we
that.
don't know.
Yeah.
So she was trying to have this conversation. Now, so then I got my brother, Philip, who was 6 years younger than me. I said, Philip, uh, did the phone ring last night? He said, Stephen, I didn't hear the phone ring, but mom did pick up the phone and she was trying to have a conversation with somebody. And it happened at exactly the same time when we had the silver bells going off. Now, the next night, I'll go back to the silver bells after I get done with this. So the next night I was sleeping in my bedroom again. At this point, my brother wasn't there, so I decided to sleep on the bottom bed, right? So I was sleeping on the bottom bed, and I heard this whizzing sound in the air, this whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I said, what was that? It's like, was it a fan on or something? And kind of looked down the hallway, and there's a little light on the kitchen, nothing there. So I decided to try and go back to sleep, and then the bed was pushed twice from the base of the bed, just like a gentle push. And just thinking that, okay, I've been through earthquakes in Southern California, maybe it's a little tremor. So try and ignore it, and then push a little stronger. At this point, I'm starting to think, what's going on? And then push, like saying, wake up. At this point, I'm thinking, is somebody playing a joke on me, or what's going on? And then I get 3 taps on my right deltoid.
Use my arm.
Tap, tap, tap. Just like an index finger right on the mid deltoid saying, I want to talk to you. So I'm scared at this point. I'm scared and annoyed. Okay, I'm scared and annoyed. And so I whirled over onto my right side and I said, what? Right into what I thought would be the face of somebody, trying to play a joke on me. And I see this shimmery type of object in front of me, and I look at it, and then I black out. Okay, told my dad about it, told my sister, and at this point we don't know what to think. So anyway, so the next night I decided I'm not sleeping in that room,
Yeah, of
because
course, yeah.
I didn't trust what was going on. I had no clue what was going to happen next. So I wore my work clothes, because I'm a guy, and didn't have a girlfriend. So what the heck, So I wore my work clothes from the day before, and at about 5:30 in the morning I woke up. It was dark, and I looked at my piano, thinking about what music I was going to play that day, and I listened to the little fountain in the other room that we had. So I was awake. I was laying face up on the couch, and 25 feet behind me was the front door. And I was just laying there, and it was like this tall entity from behind me, tall blue white skinny entity, 6.5 feet tall, realized that I was awake and literally came to the door and brought all this blue white energy, light with it. And it covered the distance. It was walking, but floating walking. Okay, so it wasn't like going plunk, plunk, plunk. It just was upright, and it floated and stopped on my right side in about 2 seconds. And the whole right side of my body was like cut in half. From the standpoint, I had no sensation. I couldn't, my right eye was already open, but I couldn't close it. And effectively, I couldn't even move the left hand side of my body. And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to, granted, the whole room was filled with blue white light, right? So I'm thinking, I'm going to see O'Glegley that I'd heard about from other people in the family from generations. But the other half of me, the logical side, is saying, dude, you can't move. You're immobilized. You can't do a thing if you wanted to. And so this being bent down to me and whispered in my ear, and this is important. It wasn't telepathic. This was whispered in my ear. Hi, Steve. Okay. I
His
couldn't tell.
name.
I couldn't
Not
tell.
creepy at all. Not
I
creepy at
couldn't.
all.
I could not tell whether it was male or female. It was androgynous. Okay.
Okay.
And and I'm straining to get a good look at his face, but I can't. I can't even move my neck. And then I whatever happened, about between 5 and 10 seconds later, after that, I felt it basically go back to full vertical position and go back out the door and taking the light with it, and it stopped, and then I just blacked out. So I told my dad and my sister about this at breakfast time, and again, we're just thinking, well, we don't know what to think.
What the heck is going
Okay.
on? Yeah.
So, anyways, 11:30 that morning, my dad and I, being workmen, we were getting hungry for lunch. So I said, Dad, I'll just go down and get some food for us, right? So I reached in my right-hand side pocket and I pulled out the nails and all the American coins and some bills that I had in the pocket, and I put up them all on the table, and all the coins are magnetized. And it's supposed to be impossible. Okay, I can tell you it happened. I could pick up the coins from the edges, from the face. I had a couple of six-penny nails, could do the same thing. You could pick up the coins with nails, nails with a coin. My dad could too. All right, this was 6 hours after the incident. Okay, so, and it was 1979. I wish I'd gotten, ran and gotten a camera, or just basically had the foresight to like save the coins, but I didn't. Okay,
Yeah.
These things had been so common in my family, like weirdisms,
weird things.
that it's just like, other people would say like, oh my God, but this was not a first time for me. Okay.
I like how you call it weirdism, because I can
Yeah.
relate to that. Yeah, that's an interesting
Yeah.
term. And like this bluish figure as well. I think I have told you about that I had an encounter with a shorter bluish figure. I assumed it to be about the age of like a 4-year-old or something along that. I just said that because of the height, but the being
Right.
itself was maybe 3.5, I'd say 3.5 feet tall. But that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
I have other stories about beings about that height too. But anyway, the fifth night was one that I have no recollection of. My dad does. My dad was awakened in the middle of the night, and he just looked at my bedroom doorway, because we had a hallway between it was a bedroom, hallway, then bedroom, right? And so we saw this intense wall of blue white light that was encompassing my doorway. And his being an ex-cop and whatever in military, he thought, like, what's all this then? Like in Monty Python, right? So I'm going to get up, see what is going on. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, right? And so he was getting out of bed, and a voice, this time inside his head, not external, but inside his head, said, Jeffrey, just go back to sleep. Nothing to see here. Stephen's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. And that's what he did. He went back to sleep. And then he told me about it. And Karen, he told both of us at breakfast time. And I have absolutely no clue. I have no recollection of that whatsoever. But I just have my dad's word to go on it, because it was the same blue white light. Okay. And it was just, and all these things stopped after that fifth occurrence. They just happened for 5 straight nights, and then they stopped.
Well, other things happened to you later in life.
Later.
But,
But nothing like to that degree and in that consistency. One, two, three, 4, 5. Well, I don't want to say to that degree, but that one after the other, after the other, after the other. There was
right.
something.
You're right. I mean, I've had actually probably the most incredible experience of my life happened December 26th at 4:44 in the morning in 1982. But that's another story. But that is, basically, I know that there are higher powers, and that we have the ability to tap into them, because I know those things are true, because it has happened to me. And so I know there is a connection between the paranormal and what we commonly call the ETs, or extraterrestrials. And as you probably know, we don't consider them extraterrestrials. We call them our cousins. Now, there is a possibility. There's a possibility, as there could be other say races or whatever too, that have or are here, but that's not what our research has shown.
Yeah.
And my experiences. So
as we started researching for the book, at the time, the theories were that these beings, the different types of aliens, were separate races coming here from different star systems.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I tried to make that theory fit our data, it kept not fitting. For one thing,
what do you mean by that? Please explain.
for one thing, they're being seen way too many times. They're seen in our skies 10,000 times a year. That's worldwide reporting. And we figured reporting is only about 10%. So really, they're being seen 100,000 times a
Yeah,
year.
that's not even our data. That's basically
Yeah.
what the data shows, that people say that.
And this is every year going back maybe hundreds of years. That's another thing about the
Thousands.
phenomenon, is it's pervasive today. It's very commonly seen today, but we have evidence of it going back thousands of years. And for me, this keeps pointing to residency rather than visiting from distant star systems, right? Also, I kept reading report after report after report about UFOs being launched from inside the planet somehow. They're coming up out of lakes or up out of the ocean or up out of mountains, out of ridges, out of mesas. You know, a mountain, a hole might open up in the side of a mountain and a light spill out, and UFOs fly in and out of it, and then it closes back up like a duck blind, you know.
And also, of course, the cow mutilations.
Yeah, that pointed towards residency as well. Like, why would distant star systems, want cow blood and come all this distance for cow blood and cow semen,
Yeah, especially some of the common theories that are going around right now. There being more advanced light beings and whatever.
Yeah,
we
really, think this is too rabbit holey for us.
It doesn't match up with what they're actually. Actions always speak louder than words, and we very much believe in the scientific method and the means, opportunity, and method.
Right.
Watch what they do, not so much what is said.
And we had rumblings about underground bases too.
Yes.
MUFON. There's a lot of theories about, for instance, Mount Hayes is supposed to be a military / alien secret base. Dulce, New Mexico is supposed to be another secret military / alien base.
Mount Kailash too.
And then there was the stories about Admiral Byrd. We took them to heart. In the late 30s, Hitler was showing this bizarre interest in Antarctica. He had U-boats combing the Queen Maud Land coast. And at one point, one of his U-boat captains was quoted in the press as saying, "I have found a paradise under the ice for mein Führer and our homeland." And then suddenly right after this, Hitler started sending enormous resources to the continent, like personnel and mining equipment and engineers, lots of engineering personnel down there. And so after the war, the U.S. surmised that there was a Nazi base, perhaps under the ice sheet in Antarctica.
Well, you should also tell them too, because remember Operation Paperclip, there was like literally hundreds of German scientists, and I'm sure they spilled a lot of information too, let them know that this, hey,
this base is real, So there's a Soviet intelligence report that talks about this base, and also about Operation High Jump. So Operation High Jump was this carrier group, or like an armada of ships that was sent down to Antarctica, ostensibly to do, training and research and whatnot. But really, we believe it was
allegedly,
it was we think instead that they were tasked with the destruction of this base, and Admiral Byrd was in charge of it. And according to this Soviet report, when they got down there, they were attacked, and they were attacked by these flying saucers that came up out of the ocean and shot a ray at the boats and the planes and downed like half the planes and sank a destroyer and then plunged back in the ocean. And what we surmise is that after Admiral Byrd got his butt kicked by this unknown adversary, he flew his plane over to the ice sheet and flew down into this giant hole that we now know really exists because Linda Moulton Howe did some work on whistleblowers from the military down there.
Yeah, he had his co-pilot and a couple other people with him.
Yeah.
And when we talk about a hole, it's literally his instrumentation basically wasn't working the same anyway, so it was hard for him to tell which way he was going. So, but this hole, which has been since verified by whistleblowers,
supposed to be like a football field size,
huge.
Where you could fly a plane. And supposedly he flew his plane down into this underworld and met with these people claiming to be the Ariani. and they tell Admiral Byrd that mostly we usually we don't want to have anything to do with you surface people and your barbaric wars, but now we have to intervene. We have to, because you guys have learned to split the atom. And this is a power you're not supposed to have, right? This is beyond your ability to control it. And I would have thought this was a nice little myth and a little story, but there's been so many weird things corroborating it. There's the Anita data showing these antennas that they launched at McMurdo Station down in Antarctica that show cosmic rays are coming up out of the ice sheet from below.
Like tachyon particles.
Yeah.
And also
supposed to be impossible, but it's happening. And then there's that hole, there's an enormous no-fly zone in Antarctica. And I would venture to say, why? Who cares if we fly over this giant ice cube, right? Who cares, right? But
especially after, like, there was a medical emergency. That's why the pilot and his crew decided to
break the no-fly zone.
Break the no-fly zone. And this guy was going to die, and he died anyway.
He ended up dying, but they broke the no-fly zone because of this medical emergency. And sure enough, they spotted this enormous hole. So this hole goes a long ways to backing up Byrd's stories, and also this bizarre activity in Antarctica. The way the U.S. has just created this no-fly zone and is very protective of it, and it's enforced.
There's scientific
quite severely,
and the scientific anomalies, and also to the
stuff's poking out of the ice now. Now that the ice sheet's melting.
Now we're starting to see like pyramid shapes that are that are being revealed, and also to the ridiculous increase of the melt off on the west side of Antarctica, where at the same time the east side it seems to be building up ice and snow.
That's interesting.
It's looking like there is actually some industrial activity beneath the surface that's causing
this heat, maybe.
All this resonant, wave like radioactivity, and also tachyon particles from the Anita array.
Yeah.
And that is being documented, and it said it's not supposed to be there.
So these things are kind of backing up his stories, and his stories point towards. He describes these beings as men, and we now know that like there was this the guy called Valiant Thor who supposedly lived at the Pentagon for 3 years advising people, and he landed a spaceship in Virginia, and he's a red-haired Caucasian man, right? And so once we applied the Admiral Byrd stories and the idea that these are human beings, once we applied that to our data, everything clicked and started making sense. It makes sense now that why they can breed with us so easily.
Right. That's right.
They have this breeding program, and they're taking mostly Caucasians. And I thought, well, why? Why are aliens would care whether we're Caucasian or not? Well, the Ariani happened to be a branch of the Caucasian race. So they would have all kinds of use for Caucasian DNA, where people from distant star systems, why would you care which human you have,
the breeding too. It's like you look at just the basics, the means, opportunity, motive. Like, what would their motive be? Why would they be wanting to breed with us and make hybrid versions of ourselves? And what would be the motive? And also too, like a tiger and a lion can get together. You get a lion or a tiger, but they're basically mules. They can't reproduce. So, like I say, we can't breed with a chimp or a gorilla. We just can't do that. Nope. It has to be like within 99.95% for you to be able to have a viable embryo and then have a viable offspring.
Right. And this breeding program, they're actually having sex with people.
Yeah.
People are being raped by aliens. And having progeny, and my contention is that they can't be anything else. They can't be anything but human. If they're having sex with us and making babies, they have to be human.
And even if they were like super, a lot more advanced than we are, then you got to look at the resources they're devoting to it, and why would they want to do it
right
in the first place?
So that's another thing is they said the main reason that they approached Byrd in the first place was the nukes, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what they're doing. If you follow the activities of the alien, I call them orbs. The orbs are like spy drones, I think, for them, right?
Likely.
And these orbs are following our military and posting themselves outside our nuclear bases and our nuclear research facilities constantly. They're obviously quite concerned about our nukes, and maybe a star system, somebody coming from another star system might care enough to be worried about us destroying ourselves. But the amount of resources that they're committing to making sure we don't destroy ourselves, I think it's showing. That's another sign showing that they live here. They have skin in the game.
Yes, I've always
They're
said that.
scared of our nukes. Why? Because if we blow up the planet, we kill them too, we think.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's why, that's our theory in a nutshell.
Yeah, we don't see
know.
that, we don't see the whole time traveler angle. I
No.
know some people, like, we've gotten a lot of response from our documentary, who they are, from everything
Yeah.
from, that they're demons to all kinds of like ridiculous stuff, and also some kind of insightful stuff too.
Yeah.
One came through yesterday that pretty much agreed with us completely, but
Yeah.
went a little bit further, that the Greys have actually been here for like a million years and have evolved primarily underground because they found underground safer and whatnot, but they can still breed with us. It's fascinating
Yeah.
what kind of conversations and comments and these comment threads have generated. We've had like about almost 2,400
Yeah.
comments since we released it.
And one of the things I brought to this relationship, Steve is obviously the main experiencer in the family, although I have seen a couple of UFOs myself. But one thing I did in college was I was researching ancient art history, and I became very interested in the flood, the Great Flood. And the more I researched the Great Flood, the more I thought this sounds like a shared common event that happened all around the world. There these flood myths. This one guy tracked down hundreds, like a couple hundred years ago. He did.
Fraser, right?
Fraser is his name. He wrote a book on flood myths that he'd gathered in the the mid 1800s, and he tracked down 500 separate cultures that had a Noah story, like a flood myth, in their ancient lore. And since that time, there's just been more and more of them. Now there's almost like 1,200 separate cultures worldwide that talk about an ancient flood, some great catastrophe. So to me, it pointed to a worldwide shared event that has actually finally been figured out. 13,000 years ago, we had a mini extinction event on the planet. The Clovis people of North America were wiped out, and the mammoth died out, and the mastodon, a bunch of animals, the saber-toothed cat, and the dire wolf,
American camel,
and horse. They all died out about the same time, and then nanodiamonds in large quantities were discovered in soil levels of that era, 13,000-year-old soil levels. And so nanodiamonds formed during celestial impact events. So it pointed to a comet or a meteor or something striking.
Right.
And it's finally been proven that the Younger Dryas comet struck Earth 12,850 years ago, has been dated finally.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's somewhere between 12,900 to 11,700 in that time.
Somewhere in there.
You are correct. Yeah, the Younger Dryas.
The Lake Superior area, which used to be what they called Lake Aziz, which went all the way from Canada down to Tennessee. It was basically, we're coming out of an ice age, and it was basically still a big ice sheet. But like, because people say, oh well, you can find nanodiamonds anywhere, like Australia.
Yeah, but not in that concentration.
True. But it's the concentration, and also the being in specific soil levels from that specific time period. Found in the northern hemisphere on 4 different continents on 10 different countries so far.
Yeah.
So it's that, because some people say, oh well, you can find nanodiamonds anywhere. Well, right. Yes, but no.
So this, because we believed in this comet, and it finally has been proven. What we surmised was that this could be what caused the human race to separate into people that live underground and people that live on the surface. Because it's like that Deep Impact movie where President Morgan Freeman is faced with an extinction level event coming. An asteroid is about to kill us all. And plan A, of course, is to send the Hollywood heroes into space to blow up the asteroid in space. But plan B was to sink these deep underground cities, like bunkers underground, so that and install like 50,000 of our brightest and best individuals and keep our culture and our knowledge and our civilization intact.
Of course, in different countries too. They just happen to call them arcs, by the way, too.
Yeah, in the book they're called arc. I mean, the movie they're called arcs. So we think this may be exactly what happened.
And the other thing it taught us too, told us, is that there was foreknowledge of this catastrophe that was going to happen, maybe a year or two.
Almost all the flood myths start with there was a warning by God, warned us that a terrible flood was coming.
Or an emissary or a disembodied voice. And it was always go to high ground, either dig in like they did in Darren Kuyu,
or build an ark.
Or build an ark, right? And they almost always end the same way too. That after a lengthy time period, that the human race was looking like it was not going to make it. Because now we know that at that time frame, after that time frame, that the surface dwellers were reduced about 10,000. There's what they call a genetic bottleneck. Thank God for cracking the genome and having CRISPR technology.
Now we know.
So now we know, tracing it back, that there was a genetic bottleneck that occurred. So also too, look, we were going back into barbarism and cannibalism, and so then
it looked like we might get wiped out.
And so go ahead and finish it, Leslie.
Yeah. So a lot of these flood myths end the same way, where a teacher, God sends a teacher, or God comes himself to the people. And so we think after the flood, the people living underground kind of took pity on us, poor slobs on the surface that were thrown back into the Stone Age, from this cataclysm. And I think they sent, gods, these emissaries of 12 gods to
the pantheons.
Like they sent them in 12. So pantheons of 12. Like the Egyptians had their pantheon of 12, and the ancient Greeks
and Sumerians and the Babylonians.
And the Canaanites, they all had these pantheons of 12. And even the New World had some of these teachers. Viracocha came, and Kukulkan came, and the idea was to give civilization back to the people. So we think that's what causes this weird incorrectness in our the attributions of who's building what. We think that the Great Pyramids, mainstream archaeology, first of all, thinks they're tombs. They're not tombs, and also they are no way they were being built by the people that they're attributed to. They're attributed to
Khufu.
Yeah, and the people of that era were copper tool users, and not even bronze tools. And copper is softer than bronze.
It doesn't even matter.
And the Great Pyramid is the main chamber. The big chamber is lined with rose quartz, and quartz is a 7 on the Mohs scale. Rose granite rather. And you can whack granite all day long with a copper tool, and you'll just you'll just ruin the tool. So there's no way that this was done by them. And the big pyramid structures in Peru and the giant stone megalithic stone cities there, they keep attributing them to the Inca, right? Well, finally, one of the cities, there was a broken one of the big corners of one of the big structures broke off, and they found this grass netting stuff underneath, and the
foundation level.
Correct. Yeah, under the foundation.
Okay. Yeah.
And they tested it, and it tested as 5,000 years old, so thousands of years before the Inca.
Yeah, the Incas didn't arrive until,
There's this pyramid building culture in Peru 5,000 years ago that we know zip about. We know almost nothing about them.
It's called Caracan, right?
Yeah, Carl Supe. Actually.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Incas were descendants of these people, of these people who built the pyramids. And like Inca means, if I do recall, it's like from the sun, from the sun. And it's I would think, like, you see never in our history have we seen a decline in technology as you do around, or like, like building capabilities as you do,
Yeah.
especially in like Peru. You can see it. The older is magnificent, and then it just gets
Yeah.
Yes.
worse and worse
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
worse. We
The
Yeah,
stuff
they're
on top is the Incas adding a patch here
yeah,
or a patch
and,
there,
and we definitely, there definitely was a reset, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
we lost the technology, and then we're back to this, trying to figure these things out and trying to understand how this goes. Yes.
Yeah, like I say, that people doubt that we, human beings can have the ability, or with different technology. All you got to do is look at the Coral Castle down in southern Florida.
Yes.
All you got to do is look at that. This guy from Eastern Europe that had, 110 pounds dripping wet, that, was pining for his love, and he was building this thing for her, and she never came over, right? But he apparently had 2 degrees, one in like engineering, the other like in
Magnetics.
magnetics.
Yeah.
And he said that, very clearly, nobody ever saw him working. They saw this black box and this tripod he would make, and mysteriously overnight, sometimes these 20-ton slabs of coral would be there and be part of the wall, or that, the
Yeah.
door that you can push open with a finger that's 2.5 tons. And he said, well, I know how they built the pyramids, but I'm not going to tell humanity.
Yeah.
So humanity is not mature or doesn't know. Humanity will destroy itself if I release this information. And then he died, and of course his black box disappeared. But yeah, he knew, and he proved it. He would do this stuff at night, and nobody ever saw him working.
Yeah.
Total mystery. And this was way before cranes and heavy equipment. And so modern day example of, that, yes, this is real.
And like Suaman is a particularly impossible structure,
Yeah.
and even the Inca, when the conquistadors show up and ask the Europeans finally showed up and asked the Inca, did you build this?
Nope.
Yeah, they said, no,
Nope.
it wasn't us. It was here when we got here. And also the roads. The people forget that the road system goes all the way between all these temples, all these enormous structures, through the Andes Mountains.
Yep. Yes.
And
Like,
the Inca are supposed to have built this without draft animals, without you know electricity and diamond cutters and dynamite, and it's like ridiculous that
Right.
they
Right.
built
so
it.
I have a question then. So do you believe that these civilizations existed far before, and then they retreated to Antarctica and retreated to the,
Yeah, we think they. Yeah,
Argatha, which I believe is what's called which is what is the center of the Earth, what people call Argatha. I
Agapa.
think. Yes.
yeah. Although that's the hollow Earth thing, and we're not
Mhm.
that. We don't believe the
Well,
Earth's
no, no, I'm
hollow with the
just,
sun in the middle.
but if there's a hole,
Yeah.
in the ground,
Hmm.
we have that. It doesn't
Right.
matter how hollow you believe it is. If there's a hole, there is something
Yeah.
that is below the surface, and
Sure.
it could be these arcs that you're talking about. It doesn't have to be the whole Earth is hollow. It can just be certain
It's not.
areas. Like the.
About 25 years ago or now, they were, doing, before the whole LiDAR thing came out, they were still able to detect different structures or land masses, subsurface. And I remember it's like 25 years ago that they detected a landmass about the size of the United States or Australia, that was like about 100 miles beneath the surface of the Earth. That's literally like, it's a continent. Okay, they detected a continent, and then also since then with lidar, we've been able to detect subsurface seas, literally
Like oceans.
oceans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally,
I've heard that. Yeah,
right,
they can hear the waves. They can hear the waves crashing.
right. And so that begs the question, like, if these things do exist, and they apparently do, that obviously life
Right.
always finds a way. So, what's there? And
And Homo sapien has been in existence for at least 120,000 years.
yes,
So for at least 120,000 years, our Homo sapiens were just as smart as we are now. The same, if you shave them and put them in a suit, you wouldn't be able to tell them from us currently,
same
right?
brain capacity, same potential. Yes.
Right. And it's a lot of people think even older, but at least 120,000 years, and mainstream archaeology would have us believe that we sat around for 107,000 years, advancing in no way.
Picking fleas off our butt.
Yeah, freezing our butts off in caves, not even building the house, not even inventing the house, right? And then suddenly 13,000 years ago, we just decide to get some gumption up and go to the moon, you know? But
Yeah,
we
yeah.
take
Where did
from
that all come from?
yeah,
Yes.
from the caves to the moon is 13,000 years. And this 107,000 years before that, we could have gone to the moon 5 times in that time period.
Oh,
And
I
it,
believe we did. I believe we
yeah,
did. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and it doesn't sound like the human race to me. It doesn't sound like I mean, good or bad or whatever we are an industrious people. You know, we are a busy bunch.
We're curious. We're industrious. We're inventive. We have imaginations. We have,
Yeah.
you know.
We're not going to sit around for that long. It's kind of obvious to me that we evolved to a certain level, and then this extinction level event laid us low, and we had to start over.
In fact, one of our chapters, right, Leslie, we spent like a whole chapter just talking about just what we know about that we've been able to verify as far as near extinction level events or extinction level events that have happened, and it even in recent history.
It comes fairly often.
Yeah.
In just the emergence from of man, we tracked down about 10 impact events that would have been nearly extinction level events. So it's possible that this separation of our race came many times, and maybe not just the 13,000 years ago we think, but maybe even prior times to that.
Right.
And that could be why the grays look like they've been evolving underground for a millennia,
a long time,
couple of millennia. Like they look like humans, though. They're humans in that they stand perfectly upright. Only humans, aliens, and Bigfoot do this. Nobody else does this. Our closest relative, the bonobo chimp, it's still a four-legged animal, really. When it's frightened, it runs to the trees and takes to the trees on all fours.
Right.
So
it doesn't have the same brain pan we have. Doesn't have the neocortex.
I do have a question with the Greys. There's been a lot of conjecture that the Greys are like an AI or a robotic that can be inhabited by consciousness almost, like it's almost like a device that you would use. What are your thoughts on that?
I've got a few on that.
Yeah, we think they're genetically engineered race. I think,
Well, there's a lot to be a lot of conjecture on that. I agree with that term there. As an example, it gets down to, like now we're wrestling with the idea about, AI. Can AI generate consciousness and therefore also generate a soul or something like that? And why do we, as biomechanical, organic beings, why do we have a soul? And when does the soul occur? So does that mean like a machine or a android or some type of combination using machine and organics? Can that also acquire a soul?
Well, whether soul or not, they behave like automatons.
Yes.
They never wonder what to do next. They're incredibly goal driven. They are telepathic. So what I think is that the Nordics are the ones kind of in charge. They're the ones that met with Byrd. They're the ones that met, we believe, with Eisenhower and set up, this
unholy agreement.
This agreement, that they
Mm-hmm.
made the agreement a long time ago to keep their secret for them, and let them take as many humans as they need for their projects, and in exchange for some dribs and drabs of their technology,
like fiber optics and transistors and things like that.
But they didn't get what they really wanted, which was us to denuclearize. They want us to take better care of the planet. That's their message. Whenever whenever they manage to get a message across to it, it's almost always the same thing. Stop using nukes and take better care of the planet.
Right, we're concerned.
Why do they care? They live here.
Yes, they're sharing the same world as us. Yeah, I do agree with you. I do believe that there are some other world races, but I do believe that a lot of these are from our planet. It's beyond Antarctica. And I believe Antarctica is the key.
It's one of their many bases.
It's just one. Yes.
Like Mount Kailash is supposed to be home to the underground civilization of Shangri-La.
Mount Shasta.
The Lemurians went under Mount Shasta.
They have them in Russia and in China. I mean, it's like even Australia. Australia's got stuff going on down there too.
I have a theory about volcanoes and them. So let's say they have a technology a little bit ahead of ours when they realize that they're about to get wiped out by this comet. So where do you move a population quickly to like an underground bunker? And what comes to mind for me is an extinct volcano, because volcanoes have this throat that goes all the way down to the mantle, pretty much through the crust of the planet. Yes. And then off the throat are these lava tubes that sometimes open up into enormous chambers like magma domes.
Yeah, not all of them do, but yeah, there definitely will be some.
So, and a mountain is high enough ground where it's going to be above your tsunami line. So you don't have to worry about a lake being left on top of you if you drill underground, And it seems to me that there's power down there. You tap into geothermal power. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe that's why they picked volcanoes a lot of times to move the population into. It's like a pre-existing bomb shelter or bunker to almost pre-existing, where you just have to hollow it out a little bit more and
yes, because we do give them the benefit of the doubt that they knew different technology than we know right now. They definitely knew how to manipulate rock and work with rock and stone in different ways.
A lot better than we do.
So many examples like Pumapunku.
Yeah.
Those just look like concrete blocks to me, because I did a lot of that stuff when I was.
Yeah, they almost look molded.
They look molded. They absolutely look molded. They do, because that's instead of like the cutting thing, no, they were molded. As far as I can tell.
They're too identical to each other,
we see the beveling they did with Sacsayhuaman, and there's no mortar. In fact, mortar just makes it weaker. If you can melt a Mohs scale level hardness of 7 material together, it's just, and then you basically don't align the fracture points. You've noticed that with Sacsayhuaman, they distribute the fracturing points all over the place.
With the polygonal shape to the rocks does that.
So therefore, an earthquake can happen. It'll just laugh at an earthquake, because it basically redistributes all the power from the earthquake, and it's just it won't break. So
and they still haven't broken. After how many how many millennia.
And people don't necessarily know this, but Machu Picchu is located directly on top of 2 faults, and it's just perched on this cliffside. This cliff with 2 earthquake faults right there, and you'd think it would have fallen into the crevasse by now, but no.
And you would also think that you also have to question why on top of these mountains. Like, why would you be building up there? And I have a story to go along with that. Is my wife was working here in Mexico with they're putting in gas lines, pipelines, and they decided to avoid a river, believing that there would be a lot of archaeological finds, because that's an issue. Is when you're building this, if you find it, you got to stop, bring the archaeologists in. So they decided to go on top of the mountain. So they built this special lift, like almost like a chair lift, to take these pipes up and everything. They put it on top of the mountain. When they got to the top of the mountain, there was a community much like Machu Picchu. They found. They discovered actually one. They discovered one here in Mexico, very similar to Machu Picchu. And
no kidding.
Yeah,
wow.
They had to call in their archaeologists, and they had to go through everything. Really crazy.
All the stories in Rome too, where they had to redirect the underground subway systems because they've come across digs.
Yeah, I was visiting Rome, and when I was in the underground, using the underground railway in Paris, it just went straight to where it was going. But when you got into the underground in Rome, it would take these wild banking turns. The subway car itself is actually having to go do these wild turns, and I found out later it's because they kept finding archaeological. They're trying to put in a subway, and they would get like like a couple of 100 yards, and then suddenly, whoops, there's an architectural dig. Now we have to close it up, back up, and turn, and go around it.
And then the famous
it kept
stories,
happening.
and then all the famous stories from Iceland. I mean, literally, where they take the whole fairy thing, almost like the Tuatha De
Yeah,
Danann,
the
Yeah,
elves. Yes, the
yeah.
elves.
they
I
take it absolutely seriously.
Yep, I have. I'm actually in the midst of talking with someone to bring someone on to talk about that specifically.
Yeah, it's real stuff.
But we have a guest coming up soon too, who's you know, uh, we didn't do a Christmas show of our own, and because I was too lazy or forgot or something.
No,
but I found somebody who was doing one.
You're just too busy. You're
And
working like 100 hours a week.
yeah. Anyway, but one of our guests, we found a guest that's going to come on who did this great Christmas show, and that's going to be our Christmas show, is having him talk
Cool.
about his. It's the Dairyland Frights podcast. His name is John Radke, and he's going to be our guest soon. Yeah, for the
Cool.
hopefully we'll
I
launch
think
it
that'd
in
be
time
fantastic.
for Christmas.
Yeah, for sure. So, I got a couple closing questions before we wrap this
Sure.
up here. So, if you could ask these beings one question and get a clear answer, what would it be?
Wow, one
Yeah.
question.
One question.
I'd like to know if I am indirectly related to them.
Yeah. I'd like to find out, are they doing this breeding program so that they can eventually reintegrate with us, or is it to infiltrate our society?
Great questions. I have speculation on it, but we'll leave that for another time. Okay.
Fair
And
enough.
what do you hope your readers take away from your book? Who they are and what are they up to?
Well, for me, I hope they would keep an open mind and take uh, at least the experiences that I've had, my family have had, that I know about. Also, too, we didn't explore all of my experiences in the book. A lot of them are in our little reels, our little stories that we have on our
On
website.
Instagram, yeah.
Right. I mean, just the ones that I know about, and for my mom and for myself, and my brother, and whatnot. I would hope they would, take away from it that we're doing this in earnest. We're not doing this to make money. We're not doing this we're doing this from personal experience, and that was our motivation
Right.
for doing the 2 to 3 decades worth of research in the first place.
I wanted to help people. I kept seeing people on the television shows, because we watch everything that has to do with UFOs, right? And I kept seeing these people looking up at the sky going, what do they want? Why are they doing this? This poor person keeps getting abducted again and again, and they don't understand it. And we had a theory, and so I was hoping that our theories would help explain who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and maybe make it a little less scary, because we do think they are humans. So these are not horrible monsters coming from another solar system. We think
Or
they're
another galaxy,
or another galaxy.
time.
Yeah. They're just
Exactly.
humans, and they're lying to us. They played God for thousands of years. Now they're playing space alien. Anything to get us looking up at the sky and not down under our feet.
I think every culture realizes human beings, we suffer from the 7 deadly sins. The greed, gluttony, lust, vanity, pride, wrath, and sloth. Okay, so if we're made in any way in the image of our Maker, okay, well, they're dealing with that stuff too. Then also too, the fact why we have this insane fantasy and lust for gold, and also we are really good at enslaving people. We've got that down to a T.
Yeah.
All right. So we look at and human beings are really good at imitating. We imitate what we see.
Yeah.
And so and also too, a lot of our research started way before the internet. All right, so we're not just watching TV shows. I mean, we actually did the reading, okay,
Yeah,
way before the internet, and also my personal. So I just want people to look at our stuff with an open mind and realize that we're being earnest about this
yeah.
and forthcoming. And I think we're not very far off,
I think
honestly.
one of the things I like too about our theories is that it doesn't require any theoretical physics to exist for our theories to work. Because they're not coming here from distant star systems, you don't have to have faster than light travel. You don't have to have wormholes or interdimensional travel. And they're not coming here from other times, so you don't have to have time travel. Good old fashioned rocketry is the way they used to come
It's talked
to.
about in the Bible and
Yeah,
older texts all the time. They came
it's
down in
always a fiery
fiery
chariot
chariots.
coming
Yes,
down, So
right. So, mhm,
now we think they have upgraded their power
of
source,
course, yeah.
but to like a nuclear, because people who get too close get these electromagnetic radiation
Or it may
burns.
be even something beyond that. We know they have inertia dampening fields where they
Yeah,
Bob Lazar talked about that. So whether it's like indirectly or directly, but we know they've upgraded too. I mean, if you look at like the Foo Fighters during World War II, they looked different than the stuff's been reported now. They
they
look
remind
like
me of the
older
orbs that they're
technology.
currently using, though, kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
the spy orbs.
So we're just basically being earnest about what we're doing, and
Yeah,
our research shows us what we found. And we're also not rabbit hole people. We don't, my experience shows me that no, it's usually the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid,
yeah.
is usually the more
Or Occam's
obvious.
razor.
Occam's razor.
The most obvious thing is actually
Yes,
usually what is right.
right. Hmm.
That's so true. A lot of times, and because I believe like the conspiracy theorists are inundated with conspiracy theories that
Yes,
are to take us off in different directions and keep us away from the actual truth. And
correct.
some of them are really
Yeah,
ridiculous, but
Hmm.
if you kind of pull back just a little bit, you'll find the truth there. It's not what they're telling us, and
right.
it's not what they're feeding us.
Right.
It's somewhere in the middle. There is a lot of truth, but you have to wade through all the lies to discover it.
Right, exactly. It's they call it the lie sandwich or the truth sandwich. How can you hide a lie within two partial truths with a lie, or the other way around? It's the lie sandwich or the truth sandwich. And they're masters at
Yeah,
this stuff. They just know it's easy to misdirect people and to get them
right.
going down the wrong path. And you got to just clear your mind and say what actually makes sense.
Fantastic.
Some things don't make sense at all, but
No,
people are like 10% of the United States still believes that the Earth is flat. Okay, my God, coming from a background of science and teaching, and also 12% of people still think that the moon landing was faked. Well, talk to Buzz Aldrin about that and the other astronauts, and say,
Yeah, they get
yeah,
incensed when
they
people say that.
they will tell you something different. That's for
I said,
sure.
"Are you kidding? I froze my ass off and almost died 6 times."
Talk to Jim Lobel about that. Yeah.
well, fantastic. I really appreciate this, Leslie and Stephen. One
Thank
last
you.
time, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
All right. Again, the book is who they are and what they're up to. And we only talked about the first half of the book. We get in a lot into the Anunnakians, giants, and Sumerians in the second half. So it's still low. It still would be worth reading
Our
for people.
documentary it will give you a real good, a bit more of a taste of the
Hmm.
second part of the book,
Yeah,
and we're also too we're starting our own show.
yeah.
We haven't even talked about that.
Yeah. We have a new show on GnosticTV.com called Abductions 101: UFOs and the Paranormal Connection, and um, and we just had you on that
We had
show,
me
and
on.
yeah,
Yes.
and it'll be coming out in about a week or so.
And we're going to start our
Yeah,
own merchandise thing
yeah.
going too,
I've designed
because
T-shirts. I'm an artist too,
we
so
all in this field, we all have to make a little bit of money so
yeah,
that
somehow, right?
we can pay for our microphones and
Keep the
our
lights on.
mixers.
Yeah,
Exactly. Keep the lights on. Put the turkey on the table. For
Right.
Christmas. Yeah. No. And I agree. We put a lot of time into this. We put a lot of
yes,
time,
we
and we
do.
offer this.
A lot.
I know I would consider ourselves independent journalists. We're
Hmm.
bringing this independent type of information. Everybody subscribes to Netflix or to Paramount or to Amazon or things like that. Well, they can you know help us out. Not help us out, but we're giving you something. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
great to get
Right.
something in return. But yeah, I think that's fantastic. I want to say thank you guys so much. All the links will be down below, and if you guys have that merch store that's starting, this show is going to be coming out in January. We're recording right now, December 17th.
Right.
So
It should be ready by then. Yeah.
by then, yeah, and the links will be all down below in the show notes. So thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks, Rye. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having us.
It went very well. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I want to say thank you again to Leslie and Stephen. That was really a fascinating story, and perhaps we'll have them back on again to go into their second half of the book when we start talking about the Anunnaki, the Sumerians, the giants, which for me is like the Nephilim. There's a lot to dissect in that, and it really kind of, this show and what they're saying kind of, in my personal opinion, ties in with Atlantis. I think Atlantis plays a big part in this, and it's I didn't bring that up during the conversation, but definitely when we have another conversation, I think that will come up. So I want everybody just keep your minds open, and it was a very great conversation. So if tonight's discussion has sparked your curiosity, be sure to check out their book, who they are and what they're up to, for a more in-depth exploration of their fascinating topics. Also, they have that documentary as well, so you can find it in two different places. You can find it on YouTube, and you can also find it on Amazon. They're selling that. So again, thank you so much to Leslie and Stephen for sharing their stories and perspectives with us tonight. I'm Rye, the Codega. Stay curious, keep your curiosities wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home. I look forward to our next adventure together as we navigate the mysteries that lie ahead. Until our paths cross again, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.